So how did you come with the realization that actually empowering women was fundamental for the development of society?
Well, it's very simple. I think if you look at the society as a collective of many families, and if you look at your own family, and in anyone's family, anywhere in the world, the role of the mother is always a very, very selfless role. Mm-hmm. She's someone who is going out of her way to do anything for her children. And so if you look at a country, if you look at a community, and you say, okay, what is it that I can learn from this mother, who at a point was a daughter, she's a wife, she's in many relations, and her learnings really inspired me to think of a solution where you say, okay, let's look at the whole society from that perspective. Normally what happens is when you look at a woman or a target audience, you will say maybe 18 to 25, socioeconomic class A or B, you sort of categorize in a way which is in a language which is a business language.
Schematic. Yeah.
Yes. So if you look at it from the heart, from the emotion, and I think then you look at it from a very different perspective, that's how the movement of Tanishka really was born. That I believe that if you can solve, a woman can, and if she has a dignity, the family is safe. And if you respect that, the family is happy. And imagine if you now multiply this whole effect across a country, the whole country will be prosperous and will be able to transform.
What's the role of the man as head of the family, as a typical head of the family, in a movement like Tanishka?
Well, the first for him is to realize that he's not the head. I think it really starts by saying that, look, you are strong in some areas and the woman is strong in other areas. And you have to understand this reality, which is the course of nature. So once you accept this reality, I think then it's not really about gender equality. It's really about respecting which gender is strong in which area. And I think that's the role that the man has to understand. And if he understands this, I think, things will be very different.
You think there's an openness for this kind of thinking? I mean, for this idea?
It will have as you start doing pilots, as you start looking at realities, because initially any idea that comes through is always sort of, is it really going to happen? Will it really work? But once you see a pilot succeeding, you get inspired by it and you start changing. And that's how people have changed over the years when they are inspired by looking at different people doing different things.
How did you approach the first pilot of Tanishka? I mean, really that first day that the first group gathered together.
Yes. Well, in my country, in India, in the state of Maharashtra, which is has a population of 120 million, which is similar to Mexico, 110 million actually. What we did was we first got women who were from diverse backgrounds, but were interested in some sort of social work. So whether it was an NGO, whether it was politics, and we got all these different women across different sections of the society under one roof, and we spoke to them. And what we realized was that when we appealed to them as like I said, as a mother or as a wife or as a daughter, things were very different, and that's where it really started.
So what I mean is, how did the project go from educated, socially involved women to basically grassroots women? Anyone can participate. How did that grow that way?
Well, in the initial meetings itself, when we said we were socially active women, that did not mean that we had to look for only educated women. There are women in villages who are socially active, but not necessarily are aware of it. Yeah, absolutely. So I remember the first time when we had women in our first meeting, there were women who were from tribal areas who had never seen the ocean, for example. We had it in Mumbai, in Bombay. And when they came to the city in a bus and they saw the water and they said, my God, this is something which was completely, it was like the Gods Must Be Crazy movie situation, where they just ran towards the water saying that, my God, this is the water. So we had these type of women also.
You think that actually open opportunity will somehow end violence?
I think violence will always probably be there in some way or the other. I think what we can do is we can create systems which will reduce it, which will not make it easy for things to happen. It's like a family unit, right? In the sense you have children, and if they're fighting, which is normal, that there's some sort of violence. But if as a mother, when you are paying attention and you create a system in the family where you ensure that the kids fight less. I mean, can you say that the kids will never fight? No, but you explain to them, you work with them. And like I said, therefore, if you look at the whole society from a family perspective, you can reach out in a very different way. You don't start addressing a problem like a typical NGO would, that, okay, we are here to solve your domestic violence issue. The moment you do that, there's a disconnect in many ways. But if you look at it from a perspective, I mean, like I said, in a family, a mother doesn't start by saying, there is a violence issue between you brothers and sisters, so I'm going to now create something, right? You handle it in a very natural way, and the natural way of handling has to be extended at a much larger scale.
In that sense, do you think that the ideal or the idea of being a man has to actually transform?
Both, I think. The idea of being a man and the idea of being a woman has to transform. I think it all starts with the woman, really, who doesn't realize that she is far, far stronger than what she is. I think it's for her to really understand and change. And what we will do through Tanishka is for her to realize that. When she behaves in a particular manner, the man reacts to it also. So it's a question of how you are also behaving, and the men will change. I think the focus, it's like if you educate a woman, you educate a family.
Of course.
And that's neat. I mean, if you educate a man, it doesn't necessarily mean that you educate a family. So I think there's a difference, and I think the strongest sex out of the two is the woman. I think she is too humble to admit that, and she's too probably polite not to exercise it. But if you give her that platform in a space where it's all right to be yourself, we have seen results which are unbelievable.
What happened? We've talked a lot in this forum about how we are predetermined to do certain things. There's a list that makes you actually a good wife, and I'm sure there's also a list which makes you a good husband, a good father. There's, a checklist. You do this, you do that, you behave this way or not. And there's a lot of this when you talk about being humble or too polite that has to do with that checklist. Mm-hmm. That checklist that we've been taught is a checklist of perfection, of acceptance, of belonging, of being recognized as a good wife, a good mother, a good worker, blah, blah, blah. I think that we actually have to work and think out of the box. And I do think that Tanishka has an advantage, which means that you actually sit down and take the time to think and talk. That it's something that in our super technological, communicated, super active, modern world doesn't happen a lot. Talking with our friend Amir about conflict resolution, of course, all those things that we talk about, like sitting down, trying to understand what the other person is saying, is very important. The problem is that you don't have the time. Mm-hmm. Usually, there's always automatic reactions. So at the end of the day, what I think is that focusing on sitting down and looking at each other's eyes and actually changing ideas and looking into someone else's perspective, it enriches oneself. So I think apart from the other benefits, just this fact of you're not alone with the problem, it's very important. Even though Tanishka is not focused on the emotional side it's not like a psychotherapy kind of club, right?
No, you're not there to fix and solve problems. You're there to share. You're there to empathize. And you're right. The stereotype image of a good wife or a good woman or a good man is. I think I always feel that it's through the movies and through television that these images have been created. But I think the world is changing. The media is changing, and we need to show that this is not something which is natural in many ways. I think somebody asked me that. How do you decide something is good or bad? And it's not about good or bad. To me, it's whether it's natural or unnatural. Mm-hmm. And the simplest way of defining that is if you eat an apple, and if I eat an apple and I get energy and I feel nice, then it's naturally good for me. If you eat an apple and let's say you have indigestion, and it creates a problem, then the apple is not good for you. It's not whether the apple is good or bad, it's whether it's natural for me or not.
And the way you relate to
yes.
that, of course.
And very simply put, that whatever increases energy overall is natural, whatever decreases energy is unnatural. So if you look at a man and a woman and you say the relationship in the family, if whatever you do is increasing the energy of the individual or the family, then it's natural. And that's how you need to look at a woman or a man. Whether you as a collective, as a relationship, are you effectively increasing, the goodness and the energy around? And that's the way I think relationships need to be defined and looked at.